All right, this is still, of course, the Arise Exchange right here on Arise News. We still keep up the coverage of the African Development Bank spring meetings in Nairobi. One of the key global financial powerhouses attending the spring meetings is the Islamic Development Bank Group, the Isdb. Now, the chair of the Riyadh-based institution, Mohamed Jassar, says its total funding support for Africa was at $74 billion last year. However, the head of the Isdb called on the African leaders to carry out diligent reforms and transform economic metrics into inclusive growth.
A continent full of promise and endowed with abundant resources. Africa, a continent that holds the dreams and aspirations of hundreds of millions of its people. Africa, a continent full of potential, yet grappling with critical challenges on its road to structural transformation. Since the turn of the century, many African countries have exhibited strong economic growth. A significant portion of this growth is the result of better macroeconomic management, higher investment and trade, larger regional markets, and to a lesser extent, some degree of structural transformation. Despite this progress, the core components of human development, including income levels and formal employment, remain low and vulnerable to shocks. This leads me to the key question that the region and its governments need to tackle in the coming years. What will it take to ensure that this higher growth is sustainable and inclusive? To foster and sustain development gains, economic growth alone is insufficient. African countries need to deepen their structural transformation to ensure a prosperous and secure future for all Africans. The priority will be on transforming natural resource-driven economies into knowledge-driven ones, while taking advantage of the region's demographic dividend. Reforms ought to focus on fostering a more conducive business environment to enhance competitiveness and encourage initiatives that take advantage of regional growth opportunities. In this regard, the African Continental Free Trade Area offers a huge potential for building regional supply chains, developing intra-African production networks in manufactured goods, and enhancing competitiveness. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, Africa is on the ascent, and I am optimistic about its development prospects. However, recent estimates suggest that Africa will require an additional $200 billion annually to achieve the SDGs by 2030. Moreover, it is becoming increasingly evident that the current global financial system will not be able to provide the necessary support to achieve the ambitious transformative agenda of Africa. It is thus not surprising that there are calls for a rethink of this framework to make it more efficient and just, giving a greater voice to the global South. Additionally, significant resources are being diverted to debt servicing at the expense of critical investments in health and education. This situation clearly demands urgent reform. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, over the past 5 decades, the Islamic Development Bank Group has remained steadfast in its commitment to Africa's socio-economic development. By the end of 2023, our financing to Africa totaled approximately $74 billion, including $45 billion specifically dedicated to enhancing trade. Our efforts have been significantly strengthened through long-standing cooperation with development partners, including the African Development Bank. Between 2017 and 2023, we achieved the record co-financing volume of $2.9 billion with the African Development Bank enabling us to co-finance 22 operations across diverse sectors, and some of them have been mentioned by my brother, Mr. Adesina.